Hi, I'm Tom Baker and I'm the grazing manager here at Wildlife Trust BCN. We use conservation grazing for a multitude of different reasons. For one of them, for example, is that cows can get places that machinery can't, and they can do the job in a more diverse way. With a machine you can only do so much. We don't control livestock and how they graze in their own individual ways. They create different patterns in the habitats, so some areas will be grazed short, some areas will be grazed slightly longer, some bits of scrub will be destroyed, so it's a way of creating a habitat that is more naturalistic and diverse than anything you could do with machinery. And they do it for free, minus the fact that we've got to look after them, of course. Cattle are a fantastic tool for conservation grazing. They do things differently to sheep, so whereas sheep will graze the grass down to the floor, cattle graze in a different way. They use their tongue to wrap the grass up, essentially like a hand, and they rip the grass. So this basically creates different sward levels, so rather than nibble it down to the floor, they create a more diverse structure in the grassland. They're also large, they can bash the scrub around. Obviously horned cattle will use their horns to break limbs off trees to get to the leaves. They're essentially the bulldozer of the livestock world. So the Highlands, they're obviously a native breed. They're extremely tough, they're resilient. On a day like today where you can see me shivering, they don't feel the cold. But yeah, they've got a thick coat, they can bash through that scrub and they don't really feel it. And that, yeah, essentially that toughness and resilience we like, because it means less work for us. So yeah, we use the cattle on a variety of different habitats. The calcareous grassland you see here, we're essentially using them to get off this year's vegetation growth, so it's not grazed through the spring and summer because we want the flowers to do their thing and go to seed. So essentially we bring the livestock on at the end of the year where the vegetation has gone extremely wooden and tough. The cattle will go along, certainly the Highland cattle, and eat that woodier, tougher vegetation and open things up so that the sheep can then grow in and eat it down to the level we want. So again, we're using the cattle as a bit of a bulldozer and the heavy hitters for the conservation grazing world, essentially.
Hello, I'm Jane Pearman. I'm the Lilbourne Meadows manager. So at Lilbourne we use mainly primitive breeds of sheep to carry out the grazing. We use the primitive breeds because they eat a lot of the, well, what people would call rubbish, so the brambles, the thistles, all the scrub, and they don't need any extra food. They just get on with the job, they thrive in those areas, they don't have huge numbers of issues in terms of health-wise, so they've got quite good feet, unlike a lot of the commercial breeds that do struggle on the coarser vegetation and wetter areas. So the main breeds that we have here at Lilbourne are the Kendal Rough Fell. So they're your biggest hill breed, and they're fantastic in terms of the grazing they do on marginal areas. They really like to get into the reeds and those wetter bits, and because they're slightly bigger breed, you don't need quite so many to create the same structure as you would with some of the smaller breeds. We've also got Herdwicks, and they're quite similar in terms of how they graze. They're based in the Lake District normally, and they do a really good job with wild clematis. We've got quite a large flock based in Bedford, and they keep Pegston Hills in really good condition. We've also got the Hebrideans. So the Hebrideans are one of the smaller primitive breeds, so they're a black sheep. They're quite small and fine boned, and they once again do a really good job eating the scrub and the rougher vegetation. We've also got our small flock of North Ronaldsay sheep, so these are particularly based at our Highwood and Meadows site, and we have the largest mainland, genetically pure mainland breeding flock of North Ronaldsays. So the North Ronaldsays are particularly deer-like in how they graze, so they don't tend to graze the grass. They do go for the gorse and the bramble and the scrub. So if you look at the grassland at Highwood, there's a really good browse line. So we're now having to look at how we manage that scrub and create structure into it, because the sheep are doing such a good job at tackling it. But they're a fantastic little breed, and because they're small and light, they don't churn up the ground when it's wet. And yeah, they do a fantastic job on that site. In my mind, the ultimate conservation management is a combination of sheep and cattle to get that nice structure. So sheep will go in after the cows have been in and lower areas. Sheep can be more selective in what they eat, so timing needs to be thought about. But having that combination of sheep and cattle is the best. Some sites it's not possible. Highwood, we used to have cattle, but because of restrictions in movements, we can't get them to site anymore, so we do just have the sheep. So it depends in terms of the site and what you're trying to achieve, as to what you use. In terms of the actual structures of the sites, after we've grazed an area, so after the grazing season when the stock are moved off, we now do a grazing assessment. So we're looking at the structure that the sheep or cattle have produced, and whether it's how we want it. Is it short enough? Is it too long? To try and work out if we've had the correct grazing pressure, or if next year we need to increase numbers or slightly change in what we're doing. So the grazing assessments are something that we've started doing now to try and give a bit more evidence to our grazing, rather than me just walking out there going, yeah, I think it's all right now, let's move the stock off. So yeah, it gives us a bit more scientific background to it.